Entering the Pat Mayo Experience.
Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings. Jumping around today in a cross-promotional show, as we do from time to time with myself and Davis Mattek's TakeCast, where we're going to be talking about the NFL and God knows what happens after that. I'm going to try to time code the show properly so you can jump around, and I don't even know what the hell we're going to talk about, but NFL for sure, and then who knows, maybe some live. I have some live questions for Davis as it pertains to the stakes of owning one of these live franchises, because I've been seeing that on Twitter this morning, and I'm going to release a show right away. So, it'll be fresh topics to go at. Davis, you started a newsletter. I love the name.
You know this newsletter. I got to give him credit. Soccer Dave came up with the name for this newsletter like 11 years ago when I was still in college, and we owned and operated a fantasy website called fantasyinsiders.com. And then it was on Roto Grinders for a while. And then I stopped doing contract work and started working for Sports Grid. And so it's been in hibernation for a while, and now it's back.
Do you think you would ever start a gardening newsletter that was called Automatic Flowers?
No, but the name translates to anything, right? You could just make it, you could just automatic anything, right? It just, it could translate. I mean, in my deepest desires and fantasies, I would love to do like a Huberman esque newsletter about like lifting weights and like biohacking and type shit, but maybe that's like a different lifetime for me.
What's biohacking?
I mean, like doing ketosis or like getting really into like supplements and shit like that. Just like changing is probably not the right word. Just like all the different interactions and ways that you can try to make yourself feel different or better, basically. It's a whole, I mean, that's $1 billion industry these days.
Yeah, but it's really weird because there's all these different concepts that come up. Like, I know Paul did the keto for a while. I tried it for like 3 days and I was like, nah, this isn't for me. Shockingly enough,
Sure.
I've found that I feel the best when I get at least 7 hours of sleep, don't smoke or drink, and like exercise every day. That's really it.
It's shocking. I mean, really, I would say 90% of all of the health and fitness industry comes down to people in the modern Western world have a horrible sleep diet. They get too much blue light late at night. They're not tired. They're restless when they go to bed, and they don't end up getting 8 hours of quality sleep. And then everything else just cascades down from that. If you're not getting 7-8 hours of quality sleep, your life is just going to be like measurably worse.
Well, I listened to Pete, and he was talking about getting the cold plunge pool. I think it was on with you when he was on TakeCast last. I've been doing the cryotherapy. It's great. But like, I have no idea. I have no idea if it's a complete placebo or not. I know I feel like good when I come out of it, but I expect to feel good when I come out of it. So maybe if I just brought that like mentality into anything, I would feel good after doing it.
I mean, I think there is a little bit of the placebo effect to everything, but it's not really the placebo effect, because what it is it's changing the levels of dopamine and serotonin in your brain. That is not placebo at all. That is an actual chemical reaction. The argument would be it's not actually the cryotherapy that's doing it to you. It's your brain's response to being like, I'm doing something good for myself and good for my body that I enjoy. So I'm getting a dopamine hit from that. I do the cold plunges and the saunas and stuff. And again, I mean, I'm not going to say, obviously I am not a PhD scientist, but I have done a lot of reading about it.
Put it this way. There's only one PhD allowed on the Pat Mayo Experience for any one given year. And you, sir, are not Tim Andercust.
No, it's not me. The data basically says that the sauna has more measurable benefits than the cold plunge. My take on the cold plunge and the cryotherapy is that doing hard things is good for our brain chemistry. Just doing shit that's hard is good for you.
Well, the cold plunges are hard. Cryotherapy is not hard at all. They give you mittens, they give you boots, because because it gets so cold. It's like minus 150 degrees Celsius, something crazy like that. That like your extremities will actually get frostbite once you're like sprayed with nitrogen or whatever the hell it is. but the rest of your body can take it for like 3 minutes, whatever. You're in there for 3 minutes, and like the moment you start to like really feel cold, it's time to get out. I will say it has helped with like my hip has been awful. I think it was from like playing golf full time last year. It's only my right hip that it does decrease the inflammation, or at least my hip doesn't hurt anymore for like 20 minutes when I get out.
Yeah, I mean that is I've never done the cryotherapy, but like cold, like extreme cold is going to be really good for limiting inflammation in general. So it would make sense that your body would feel way better. Now, I mean, some people, like if you're like a bodybuilder or like trying to get huge muscles, you actually don't want to limit inflation. Or inflammation. So it's just depending on like what your goals are. See, this is the type of shit that could have been an 800-word newsletter right there. And it would have been, that's the dream.
You just build your own empire. I mean, we were talking pre-show about, you need to become a millionaire, so you need to own something. And like really the only way to do that is to own something. You could have your entire automatic newsletter series. Like you have your football stuff. You could have your gardening stuff, like I mentioned. You could have your automatic hack, something like that. Just the automatic empire is where you need to be going, I think.
Yeah, I gotta look. I mean, it's embarrassing, dude. I'm 30 years old. I'm not a millionaire. We gotta keep grinding, Pat, because that's obviously the eventual goal. You're right. You gotta own something, though. I mean, that is probably the best advice in the history of either of our programs. Is that if you want to be really rich, you gotta own something. You're never gonna be a millionaire just working.
It's true. I mean, I was basically destitute until I started and owned Mayo Media Network, and now I'm a billionaire. So it's pretty easy. Just own something.
See, I mean, and that could be you're like a whole thing. I mean, you already work like 18 hours a day, but doing like some sort of, I mean, you could write like an entrepreneurial book, that would just be straight up passive income for you. Although I guess the fact that you can't read probably limits your ability to write a book. I didn't think about that.
It's true, but I've managed to be a professional writer for the past 15 years despite not being able to read. So maybe I can just like fake it like I've been doing the entire time anyway.
I would buy the book. I would support it. I mean, you could even find a ghostwriter. I mean, Jonathan Bales did this back in the day when fantasy contracting was more of a lucrative business. I remember put his name.
I remember this. He would third party out articles he was contracted to do and just like take the rate from it, like edit it or something like that.
Yeah, basically it'd be like he gets paid $100 a piece. He would pay someone $50 to write it and just skim that $50 off the top. Brilliant business model. You could effectively do the same thing.
Couldn't we just get like Chat GPT? Although I tried to get Chat GPT to write my column this week for golf. And like, it was a nice base to work off of, but like it probably took me more time to go back and edit what it wrote than just me writing it.
Yeah, I'm not a Chat GPT expert yet. I've not ponied up for the advanced subscription. Maybe that's coming soon. But I mean, the people who are good at it, like Peter has messed around with it a lot and he's pretty good at it. Like he's good at giving it the right prompts. He's good at knowing what he wants to get out of it. I mean, obviously I think that's a real skill, but there was just a report yesterday that one of these big tech companies is on a freezing hire because they think these like 7,000 positions that they were going to create can just be done by ChatGPT. So it's that's all coming. Being aware of and being able to positively interact with AI and get it to give you what you need is going to be like a real skill.
I tried to get one to write in the voice of me, and it just started up, "Hey, what up, Mayo Nation?" I was like, "Oh no."
Mayo Nation.
Nation.
So I think that the version that's out right now is like ChatGPT 4. I think that there's probably like another iteration. My understanding is that the crawl, that the machine learning of like where it's at in terms of the date, it's not like 100% up to date, Tuesday, May 2nd, Wednesday, May 3rd. Like it lags behind a little bit. So it's probably more difficult for like daily fantasy stuff. If you were like, okay, give me the best picks for the Wells Fargo Open, it probably is not quite there yet. But again, I'm not a Chat GPT expert. I again do not have a PhD in Chat GPT yet.
It sounds like you really need to work on getting some PhDs, pal.
I gotta get to school, man. I gotta like if you're not a PhD in something by the age if you don't have a PhD and you're not a millionaire by 30, like what have you spent the first 30 years on this planet doing? Just dicking around basically.
Well, I put in get Pat Mayo to ask Davis Mattek a question about fantasy football because I assume that's why some people clicked on this video. I apologize, but as an AI language model, I cannot directly contact individuals. All right. I guess I need to work on my prompting skills. I do remember that being a thing. And I actually talked to two of my engineering friends because I was just away on vacation for like 2.5 weeks. And we were talking about AI prompts, that becoming a good AI prompt writer is going to be like, that's something if people do want to, if you got nothing going on and you're me from 15 years ago and all you do is like live in your parents' basement and smoke weed all day, you can get better and potentially set yourself up for a lucrative job if you got good at AI prompt writing.
I mean, I would probably say that's like the number one thing I would tell someone who is like in college or in high school and doesn't really know what they want to do. I would say just, get really good at very specific prompting and question asking to any sort of open AI model, because companies are already hiring for that, like six-figure salaried positions of just basically being like, Chat GPT figured this out. And programmers and coders are like 90% doing their work in Chat GPT these days.
Because they're good at actually asking it questions, unlike me, where I can't get a like real answer out of it.
No, I don't even think these people are, above like internet literacy average at ChatGPT. It's just that ChatGPT can do all this complex coding for you automatically because that's like the easiest thing for an AI model to learn. To my understanding, is that basically anything that you would need to learn in these coding languages, ChatGPT already knows. And if you know the end result that you're looking for, ChatGPT can just give it to you. Again, to my understanding, I'm sure there's someone yelling at their phone right now, like, actually, sir, that's not how it works.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because like I visited my brother when I was away. I stopped in with him for a night. He was working on this new project, and he is basically a coder. He's built websites, built like programs for scanning medical equipment to put in hospitals, things like that. And he was like, this is like, he started using like, I don't think it was Chat GPT, but it was some sort of AI prompt to do all of his coding. He's like, I thought this was going to be like a 4-week job, and like, I'm done today. Like it's over.
Yeah, because I think if you understand the programming language and understand what you're needing, what your end goal in the back end is, obviously I don't think it can do the entire thing for you. But I think, again, there's like a manual process to coding where you have to like go in and type everything and get it how you want, and ChatGPT can just give you that framework more or less automatically.
Well, I've been working with a company now. They want to start something in like the vein of like what Odds Checker has going on, or whatever, all the aggregation sites, basically the great SEO sites that have affiliate deals linked through them. And I was like, how long till like, because it does cost even to get like a 300-word article posted on the web on somewhere like that. Like they do pay pretty well for those. And I'm actually shocked at how much they pay. I guess they must be like raking in affiliate money because their SEO is so good. But even like Action Network would be something along a similar vein where, hey, who are the picks this week for week 2 NFL? You click on it, it's like, hey, here are the 5 best prop plays. And underneath the prop, it's like, here's the odds at DraftKings, and here's the odds at whatever. And if you click through it, that site gets like $500 in like perpetuity as long as that person ends up becoming a like high-end player all of the time, or just has money in the site or is active. I don't exactly know how it works. But I was thinking like, how soon until we can get these AI models to write the previews for these sites? And then it's just a printing press. Like your overhead would be like 2% of your revenue.
I mean, very soon, right? Like extremely soon. And sports are probably the best application for it because people largely are not tuning in or reading or searching for sports writing, sports betting, DFS picks, whatever. They don't really care about the artistry. They don't really care about the language. They just more or less want the picks. They want the information. Like the information is more important than the language, basically. So that feels like it's coming extremely soon. Like I within the next year for sure. There will be a way to do that, and jobs are going to start being replaced by AI in that specific field, like extremely soon, I would imagine.
Well, that's another good reason to own something rather than be the person who does the writing at the moment. It sucks though. I guess podcasting and videos have really replaced sort of the longer form articles. And when people do go search something, it's simply to what are the picks? What's the information? That's all I want to know. But I remember when I started, the reason that I was able to build up a following, because I was writing these like 8,000 word NFL columns that were like, in the Matthew Berry style, basically, or the Bill Simmons style. Like they were some sort of personal essay for 1,500 words. Then a little bit about whatever's going on in football that week and how it pertains to betting or fantasy. And then you have picks, and then you have something else. And it all kind of relates back to football in some sort of way. But it would take like 18 hours to write. I'd be up all night doing it. It would probably take like 20 minutes to read. Like literally no one wants that anymore. No one wants that.
But I mean, one of the things I am very, I don't ever think that AI, well, I would hesitate to say never, because eventually my guess is it's a long time until AI is able to generate, artistic level fiction, movie scripts, and, for example, the things we do, podcast, TV type stuff, like people to a certain degree want a human connection. Like the podcast I listen to, and I assume the same is true for you, like you like the hosts, you like their manner, you like their sense of humor, whatever it might be. And to me, like, there are going to be some jobs, obviously, in entertainment that get replaced or supplemented by AI, but it feels like extremely human industries like that are probably more insulated from AI than, manual labor and copywriting and things like that.
Well, yeah, copywriting and just sort of the generic rinse, repeat, formulaic type writing that we see a lot, like especially in our industry right now, that I think a lot of those jobs are going to go away once the AI can, like you said, it's, I just prompted it to, tell me who won the 2023 NFL draft. They're like, we do not compute. What is that? So that's a problem, especially when you're trying to do sports every day.
This is a good topic for you. People are a big thing that people on the internet are up in arms for is that ChatGPT is too woke. That it doesn't let you be mean to people. It won't compare people. You ask it questions about like men versus women, and it won't take a stance. Like basically people are a very vocal minority of people who are too online are basically like ChatGPT is useless because it's too woke.
I mean, I don't know how to respond to that. I guess I'm like ChatGPT in that way. Like, isn't it just supposed to present information for you? Like, do you want it doing predictive analysis and doing analysis in that sort of way? Like, do I want to, just to throw that out for a second, do I want to say like, hey, give me a player profile breakdown an analysis of Will Anderson. Like, I don't know anything about Will Anderson. Here's what I want to know. Like, it can give me facts about Will Anderson, but do I really want this AI programming? Like, I mean, it'll probably do a better job than me than analyzing like his game film, but I think that comes back to the personalized thing that you were talking about, that we still need experts to do that kind of thing.
Right. I mean, like, obviously a lot of these people are just like right-wing online grifters, which, by the way, speaking of being a millionaire, if someone out there was asking what is the quickest way to become a millionaire, like, do I want to become a millionaire in a month? I would say easiest job has got to be right-wing grifter, like start like a Substack or whatever. Like that is, I was talking about this with Kevin Cole when he left PFF and started a Substack. I was like, dude, you could like literally have a top 100 Substack like overnight. Like it would just be so easy to make money. Just like getting people mad about ChatGPT being woke. Great example.
It's funny though that there's such a market for like being a right-wing grifter, yet being a left-wing grifter seems to be not profitable whatsoever.
There are like a couple people who do it who are like, what is it? The Krasenstein Bros. Is that their name? I think they do it. It was more popular, obviously, when Trump was in office, because you could just get people mad about anything, right? Or there was this big genre of people who would tweet things like, I'm hearing Donald Trump will be arrested or whatever, and that would, drive people to their Substack or their YouTube or whatever. But yeah, there's definitely less money in left-wing grifting. Although there are certainly left-wing grifters out there, but it's just not as profitable of a space. I think you're right.
Well, I think it's not as profitable a space because I think that your extreme left-wing peoples don't have any money.
Well, I mean,
like the disposable income,
or are less likely to spend it. But yeah, you're probably right.
See, I don't. Although I don't think it's a less likely to spend it kind of thing. Because I think if you're polarized either way, you're just going to continue to feed the hand of whatever like you really, really agree with, and you need to be in on that. And I mean, a grift's a grift. People are going to be taken by a grift, but it does seem like like on one side, like people actually have like money to spend.
Well, the right-wing grifters would tell you that you're wrong because actually the entire world is run by shadowy left-wing oligarchs, George Soros and all these people that actually all the wealth is concentrated in these woke, Disney is part of the left-wing conspiracy. There are all these big corporations are actually part of the woke left-wing conspiracy.
Yeah.
So
it
depends. It depends on who you're trying to grift.
No more woke left-wing individual than Bob Iger for sure, or Walt Disney.
Right. Exactly. Yep, exactly. Yeah, famously Disney, a very woke left-wing corporation, according to these people.
Or just Walt Disney himself.
Right, exactly. Yeah, he famously had very liberal, very left-wing opinions, according to the sources.
Well, I mean, see, you already have the template for your new Substack. This is what you got to go in on.
I mean, I've said this for a long time that if I ever really get hard up, I would just go all in on being a right-wing grifter because it feels like the formula is so easy. It feels like you could immediately generate 10 figures a month if you really applied yourself.
See, I think you're making it out to be much easier than it actually is because a lot of people are trying to do this and only so many people hit at doing it.
I think you're right.
Like the grifting space right now, regardless of your political leaning, is no different than like
it's a golden age for grifting.
Sure, but it's also the golden age of like fantasy content and gambling content.
Right.
But not everyone who does gambling content makes money.
Okay, that's true. I guess maybe I should say I think I would be really good at it because I have terminally online brain and I think I understand what gets people jazzed up, right? I think I would be able to generate I think I would be an expert at getting people mad online.
You know what gets people really mad online? The NFL draft, and especially NFL draft grades. I don't understand the NFL draft and the fascination with it. I do the mock draft, that's fun. I like to learn about the guys and where they might go. But like even the fantasy content that relates around the NFL draft before the draft actually happens, like it doesn't fucking make any sense to me.
I feel like this is one of the few examples of a gap between you as a Canadian and us as Americans. I don't ever remember a time not being excited about the NFL draft, not thinking the NFL draft was an event, not thinking the NFL draft was a cool thing.
That's not what I'm saying. I like the NFL draft. I like to watch the NFL draft. I like to see where the players end up going, or hey, maybe this guy will go to this team. That seems like a pretty good fit. But like that's the extent of it. For me, like why are people doing rookie dynasty rankings before players are on teams? That doesn't make any sense to me.
I'm in a couple drafts, a couple dynasty leagues where we do our draft.
Why? Okay, first off, why are you in a couple dynasty leagues? How much fucking time do you have on your hands?
Pat, I'm in like 19 dynasty leagues.
Why?
I like it.
Are you like the old school fantasy expert who there used to be like a collection? There was only so many fantasy experts around, and there were only so many experts leagues that you could be in. So everyone would just play in like 50 expert leagues, and then some people would drop out of one, some people would drop out of another, and everyone would get their industry league win. You could say, "Oh, I'm an industry champion." Is it kind of like the same thing? You'd be like, "Hey, I won like 3 dynasty leagues last year out of 300."
Honestly, I think I did like 5 or 6 of them in that COVID summer where we were all locked down and we had nothing to do. That was definitely part of it. And then all the rest of them, I've just kind of picked up through the years. I think I've only ever left one. I left an FFPC one where I was just like, this team is so bad and it's not very much money and I'll just let someone else take it and whatever, it's fine. But it's like, why do I play video games? There's not really any point in playing video games. It's fun for me. I enjoy it.
But you're playing video games and you're in 19 dynasty leagues and you're doing content?
Yeah. Yeah, that's I don't not as much video games these days. To be 100% honest, not as much time for it in the schedule these days.
Anyway, I always bring this up because we did the mock draft. I did it with Thor and Ray, two guys whose opinions I highly respect. That's why I always bring them on, because they know a lot about this. And just like, people get very triggered if like we're just, it's not real. Like, a mock draft is not the real draft, and people seem to have a really tough time separating that. Like, just the general
mock draft streets are rough.
Like, the general interactions that I get online are actually quite good, I would say, compared to like 99% of people. Like, I put out golf picks, we'll argue back and forth about golf. Everyone's like kind of nice about it, even with football when it comes down to it. Even if I say especially egregious things, but it's all inside like the gambling space or the fantasy space, whatever it might be. Like, mock drafting is like a totally different thing. And like, I'm starting to like, once I released the mock draft, I didn't even make any of the fucking picks. It was them who made them, but it gets attached to me,
right?
Because it's on my show. But like, the fans of these teams are fucking insane. Like, who are these people? Like, what do they do in their day-to-day lives that allows them to be able to afford the internet? Because it doesn't seem like they could hold down a real job.
I mean, this is like one of the secret things you learn when you mix into the real NFL fan base, is that there are just a lot of like staggeringly stupid, non-well-adjusted people out there just like living in the world. Like, you don't know, like, that guy could be the guy who change the oil on your car, or the guy who gives you your coffee at Starbucks or whatever. Like, that guy could be someone who's like getting mad about his team getting mocked a player in the first round that he thinks sucks. And that's the other really funny thing about these mock drafts that people get so mad about, is that these people don't know these players at all. Do you think people know how good or bad like Jalen Carter, the defensive tackle from Georgia, is? They have no idea, but they just get so riled up. It's like truly unbelievable.
Well, you can kind of see it in real time. My only real bridge to this is Cust, because Cust, he was talking himself into this guy he had never heard of 2 minutes after the Jets picked him in the first round. He'd never heard of the guy. Who the hell did they pick? What was his name? McDonald. Yeah, Will McDonald? Was that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, Will McDonald.
From Iowa State.
Yeah, so now all of a sudden it's like, he's like, oh, I like that he's the fourth. Like, that's like a big feather in this guy's cap. Cuss is talking himself into it. It's like, who cares? Like, to see if he's good or not. They're going to play the games.
I mean, it's all just an exercise. I mean, we were just talking about tribalism with right-wing grifting. It's the same part of your brain that's getting accessed with your football team. It's no different. It's, my team is good. Anything they do is good. It's all going to work out. And if you think my team isn't going to work out, or you give my team a bad grade in the draft, it means that you're bad and wrong and stupid.
So I have more respect now for people that do like actual NFL analysis, just the mouth breathers that they must end up going in with. And I mean,
no, I think that's a mistake, because I think it's like real NFL analysis, quote unquote, is like largely there's no skin in that game, right? Like, you can just say anything about real NFL analysis, because you're not tying it to a result. You're not tying it to like a specific outcome. There's no skin in the game.
Well, maybe that's why I was more drawn to fantasy and gambling over this sort of thing when I first started to get in, because I felt like I didn't have the expertise in order to be like an actual football evaluator. Like, you can see what you see, you know what you know, but I'm not going to understand it on the same level as, guys that coach or whatever. But it's funny that I think that I can do the same thing. Like, when you look at what the Texans did and giving up all that draft capital for Will Anderson, like, I'm not a GM, but I do understand how value works when it comes to these sorts of things. That's where I wanted to start. Like, what the fuck are the Texans doing? Do they think they're going to be good next year?
They're just biting, dude. It's like, I think the Texans have become, there have been other laughable organizations. The Jets were one of them for a while. The Lions were one of them for a while. I think the Jets are the new, the Browns were one of them for like 20 years. I think the Houston Texans are our new, these people have no idea what they're doing organization, effectively. Like, that Will Anderson trade, I mean, they very well could have just traded away the pick that becomes Caleb Williams. Like, it's so bad, this trade they made for Will Anderson. I don't think people realize right now just how terrible it is.
I think you have to understand how terrible it is, because they're a terrible team. What they need to do is replenish everything. Like, even, it's funny how it works out. Like, for the capital that they gave up to get Will Anderson, and we said this during like real time on the show when I was doing it with Jeff and Tim, that he kind of needs to be a Hall of Fame player to justify giving up that much. But,
I don't even.
But even. Hold on. Even if he is a Hall of Fame player, it probably won't make an impact to the Texans overall being good. Like he'll probably be on another team by that point.
Yeah, I mean, it does. Like literally, we have an example of this. J.J. Watt was like the best defensive player in the NFL for what, like 6 years, probably. Like he was just like kind of until Aaron Donald took that mantle from him, and it did not make an iota of difference to the Texans. They were either terrible or a wild card playoff loss exit every single year, and they had. Watt, he was like, getting like 16 sacks. He was playing like every snap of every game, and it did not matter in any way, shape, or form. And people bristle against this. By the way, this is one of the things I've found that people hate the most about the NFL now is that really nothing about the other 52 players on your roster matters if you are, B minus or worse at quarterback. You are completely disqualified from winning anything that matters, and people hate that idea in a team game. They just really do. They really bristle at the idea that because you don't have Patrick Mahomes, like it just is not. Nothing matters really, and people hate that.
I would push back on that, but I think that 90% of the time that you're right about it. I think what we've seen San Francisco do over the past few years, and obviously they didn't win the Super Bowl, but if Brock Purdy doesn't get hurt against the Eagles, I don't know if they beat Philadelphia, but it's like a real game. Now, he was out there throwing like left-handed because that's all they had left to go on. That if he can just play that game, maybe the result is a little bit different. And then we're talking about this a little bit differently if San Francisco built from the trenches out, where they have all of these excellent skill position players. They have an excellent D-line, an excellent O-line. They went out and they get a running back who don't matter whatsoever. They have a good secondary. Just the only weak part of their team is their quarterback. And it's not like he's a shit quarterback, but he's like,
sure,
playing like
the 49ers.
Playing
the 49ers are the counter.
Sure, they are the counter, but we see these sorts of teams like the Bronco Peyton Manning Super Bowl champions. Like you're going to see these teams that are just constructed as 52 guys and a quarterback who's just there. Like the Dilfer Ravens.
I mean, I think that's very much like I would imagine that probably the 2017 Eagles will be one of the last teams that ever win sort of in that style, because teams now, like if you look at pass rate over expected over the last 10 years. Like last year, it was the highest peak ever. Teams are just throwing the ball so much now that if you don't, and if you don't excel at that, I don't know. And the 49ers are the counter, but they're a counter in a way that does not apply to the Houston Texans at all, because they also have a genius coach. And I mean, they have like all world players at all these positions, and the Texans are not that, right? The Texans have zero all-world, they'll have zero players make the all-pro teams this upcoming year.
Well, that's sort of the reason why the trade stinks so much for them, because in order to do that build, like, yes, having Will Anderson, for everything that I can gather, that he's going to be very good, that's great and everything, but you kind of need, like, if he's an A, it doesn't it's not going to help you all that much. That way, if you have 4 guys on the defensive line, you have this one A+ player and 3 other guys that are C minuses. You kind of need like 3 Bs and an A+. Like that's the San Francisco model of doing this. Like you put Nick Bosa in the center, but surround him with also other very good players. That if it's just Will Anderson, I just don't know what that does for you.
No, I mean, I think it's one of the worst trades. I guess like all the really bad NFL trades came before I was like even aware. Like the Ricky Williams trade happened when I was in middle school. The Herschel Walker trade happened before I was born. These are like, but we like honestly, I think it's worse because now it's 2023 and we have such a better understanding of what leads to winning and how important draft picks are and how important that cost controlled labor is. Like, not only did the Texans give away all that draft value, but they also gave up 3 picks that were going to be guys on rookie contracts that they're going to have to fill in with guys on vet contracts. It's terrible, man. If I was a Texans fan, I would be punching air. Like it's so bad.
And it's funny because Arizona seemed like they had, because Kevin Cole was on with me, and we were talking about who has the worst roster in the NFL. And I was like, I kind of think it's the Cardinals. Like, just with their lack of depth, they're no good. They're only like true elite skill position players, DeAndre Hopkins, who now looks like he's going to go back, but he's old, and Kyler Murray's hurt and may not really be all that good anyway. But this trade kind of shores up a lot for them. Into like, they're doing what the Texans should be doing.
Yeah, and the Cardinals, by the way, I mean, they could be in a fascinating position at this time next year because Cardinals are drawing pretty live to get the number 1 overall pick next year, one way or the other, right? Either from their own pick or this pick they just got from the Texans. And if they do have that number 1 overall pick, like they're going to be, maybe Kyler comes back in week 12 and with a new coach who's not Cliff Kingsbury, he looks like a world beater and maybe they decide to go ahead with him. Or what do you do? What do you do if Kyler, has complications? You decide he's not the guy. He's owed $260 million. Like, what is Kyler Murray's trade value like? I don't know. It becomes a fascinating exercise for them next offseason, I think.
Well, they already ended up taking Murray when everyone said that they weren't going to take Murray because they had chosen Rosen already selected in the first round from the year previous. But this does create an interesting path. Like, I don't know. You probably wouldn't want, if let's say Kyler comes back and he's no good, and they do want to move on. They end up with the number 1 pick, and they do identify Caleb Williams. And listen, we're still 12 months out from the next NFL draft that maybe it won't be Williams who's the number 1 pick. Like this happened to Matt Leinart. He went back to USC, and all of a sudden he was the 5th pick instead of the 1st pick, which he would have been had he have come out the year previous. Not that he could come out, but a lot can change in a year based on how who's the receiver the Patriots got in like the 6th round? Like, wasn't he super highly ranked on everyone's draft board before the year? No, he just fell.
Well, there were the big guy who is that guy this year is Kayshon Boutte, who got drafted by the Patriots in the 6th round. He was like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, he was the number 1 overall high school recruit, and he had a really good sophomore season at LSU, and then he got hurt, and there's like behavioral stuff. But yeah, like he cost himself a bunch of money by not being able to come out, basically.
But because you have these salary cap implications tied to each of the draft slots, not that you're not going to end up paying the number 1 pick a lot of money. It's obviously going to be a large portion of your cap, but you could feasibly, if you couldn't get, like, maybe someone would trade for Kyler Murray and you just get cents on the dollar for whatever it is, if you could shed some of the money that goes towards your salary cap. But if you did draft a quarterback at number 1, could you feasibly have both of them on your roster, even if Kyler Murray was the backup, if you couldn't get rid of them? Or would it be better just to cut them and take the dead cap?
I mean, I'd have to look into the specifics of Kyler Murray's contract, but it becomes pretty onerous to hold 2 guys at the same position, and you can only play one of them.
Oh, I understand that. But if you wanted to move on anyway, and you're like, hey, we've identified Caleb Williams as Trevor Lawrence or Andrew Luck or one of those type of number 1 overall picks, like, oh, that's a guy, and he's going to be amazing. If we don't get him, our franchise is not going to be good in 10 years. And they only come around once, every 4 years, 5 years, whatever it might be. But it does seem like that's the buzz around Caleb Williams right now. Maybe that's not going to be the case in 12 months' time, like I said, but you can't pass that up, I don't think, if you're any sort of franchise and you try to figure out the rest later.
So Kyler Murray, if they cut him after next season, so in 2024, it's $81 million of dead cap. So I think they would probably just try and trade him for anything they could get. Right, if they decide to go, and his cap hit is absolutely gigantic. He's got a $51 million cap hit next season, so I think they would 100% have to trade him. I don't even know if you could, because I think the first overall pick gets here.
It's 21 or something like that, 17 year one. Or
so
something?
So you're wrapping up. It's like roughly $75 million, which is about 50% of your cap on your 2 quarters. I don't think it works. So I think they would have to just, if they do decide to do that, they would have to trade him for like a 4th rounder or something.
Even if, I don't know if teams would want to inherit that contract would be the thing. Like, would it be worth it for any of these teams if he didn't do a massive restructuring? And then why would he want to
aren't the Jets going to be looking for a quarterback after next season?
No, Aaron Rodgers is going to be there for 5 years. Don't worry about him. And listen, hey, Cuss has assured me that Zach Wilson is going to learn so much from Rodgers. He might as well just lock up his 5th-year option right now.
Yeah. I think there are multiple teams who by next offseason could be selling themselves on Kyler Murray. I think the Steelers could be selling themselves on him. I think the Falcons could be selling themselves on him. I mean, the Commanders obviously need a quarterback. The Saints need a quarterback. Biggest one to me is what do the Bears end up deciding to do with Fields if he has another season where he scores a bunch of fantasy points, but they don't win any games? Like, do you want to extend him? Do you want to pick up his 5th-year option, or do you want to move in a different direction? Like, there are at least 5 teams I could name off the top of my head who would have the cap space and would be somewhat interested in making that move for him.
The Fields thing is really interesting because I'm already going to take an L on what I thought the Bears should do, because I think what ended up happening is kind of best case scenario for him, only because I was tinkering around. Like, by my evaluation, I don't think that Justin Fields is going to be all that good. I don't think the Bears are going to be all that good. And now you're going to get into a situation where you have to pick up his 5th-year option. Then you have to sign him to one of these mega extensions that happens to all of these young quarterbacks. And do you really want to tie yourself to another 6 years of Justin Fields if he's not the guy? But I think this is a nice year for him to be able to prove that. I'm not saying that he can't do it. Maybe he will and just shove it in my face. But they did end up with the number 1 overall pick. But I thought that if they could get anything for Fields, that then they could use the number 1 pick on a quarterback and rectify that situation, reset the rookie contract clock at quarterback, and try to build out from there. Because it's not like they're going to be 1 year all of a sudden like, hey, we're really, really good now. It doesn't seem like they went out, they got DJ Moore, they signed Donta Foreman, and they signed 2 linebackers. Like, great. You're not going to be awesome, even in a weaker NFC North. However, what actually ended up happening, because it didn't seem like any of these quarterbacks were like true game changer type quarterbacks, that if Caleb Williams is and Justin Fields does stink this year, the Bears have Carolina's first pick. So if Bryce Young's not good, then Carolina could theoretically have the number 1 overall pick next year, which would be the Bears, or the Bears themselves could have the number 1 overall pick again next year. Not likely, but there's a percentage chance that this could happen, that all of a sudden you now get the better quarterback, reset everything again, and now your outlook actually looks really good for the future.
I mean, there are a lot of different ways it could break good for the Bears. They also, I mean, they actually have like NFL wide receivers on their roster now in a way that they did not last season. You know, Equinemius St. Brown and Dante Pettis were like running a bunch of routes for them. They got him a tackle. So like maybe Justin Fields has the worst percentage of his dropbacks turning into sacks of any first or second year quarterback in NFL history. No one has been worse in the history of the league at taking sacks than him. So I think we're going to find out this year, like how much of that is on him, how much of that is on the offensive line. I mean, my guess is a huge percentage of it is on him. What could really happen is they could really nut out, and Fields could play well enough that other teams are interested in him, but not so good that they want to give him the mega extension. They get the number 1 pick by hook or by crook, or even the number 2 pick, you know, because Drake May, the University of North Carolina quarterback, is also supposed to be quite good. I've got less strong opinions on him than I do on Caleb Williams. And they could find themselves in a spot where they can actually trade Justin Fields as a positive value instead of having to treat him like a salary dump or a guy they have to get off the roster, and end up, you know, just like making out like absolute bandits. Like if the Bears are good, if their front office is good, they can like really make some hay in the next 18 months.
It does seem like they're in a much better position than I thought they were going to be kind of going into the draft. And with the way that everything shook out, it's like, okay, this makes some sense here. I can see a path for the future, where I saw that for the Texans as well and didn't see it for the Cardinals. And they basically just swapped roles of, okay, I can see it for the Cardinals now in 3 years' time. They could have a really strong roster, where it's now going to be exceptionally difficult for the Texans to do that. I know, because they gave up their first-round pick, correct? Not the Browns' first-round pick next year?
Yes.
That's
there
crazy.
was confusion in the initial reporting where people thought it was the Browns pick, but it is the Houston Texans pick, which just, I mean, I don't know, man. Imagine being a Houston Texans fan. Imagine it. It's got to just be one of the bleakest existences in professional sports fandom. It's just terrible.
I don't really have any sort of evaluation on any of the quarterbacks that are coming out, but I think if it was me, I would have taken Anthony Richardson first. Just swing for the fences.
100%.
Like, either this guy's going to be fucking amazing or he sucks, and you're going to know pretty quickly.
And you're going to have the number 1 overall pick again next
Yeah.
year. So if he really is as bad as his doubters and his haters say, which I disagree with, I think he probably is going to end up being the best quarterback of these 4 guys. I mean, Levis fell all the way to the second round, but he was talking about mock drafts, people mocking Will Levis, in the top 5 picks, including me.
Hey,
I put him up there in my mock draft. I
bet him to be the number 1 pick like 4 weeks ago. Didn't work out. Wasn't even the first pick.
Funny enough,
wasn't even the first pick of the second round.
Mayo, I got unbelievably lucky betting on some of these hunches. So I bet on him to go exactly to the Tennessee Titans, thinking that the Titans would trade up to get him at 4 or at 3, and ended up backdooring 8-1 exactly to the Tennessee Titans in the second round.
So you must have been like full of glee when the draft was breaking down. When the Titans are sitting there, what were they at? 11? Was that their pick?
11.
Yeah, 11. Be like, oh, holy shit, this is going to happen. And then it doesn't happen. You're like, oh, man.
Well, the biggest wager I placed was under 4.5 quarterbacks to go in the first round. Not because I was a Levis doubter, although I was, but because to me, Hendon Hooker had like literally a 0% chance of being a first round pick. But all the Levis bets. Now I also made, very similar to you, I made other terrible Levis bets, to be the second pick, all this stuff. So like I did not make millions of dollars on the NFL draft, but I got bailed out by Levis going to the Titans.
I think that the only way that over 4.5 quarterbacks was going to hit this year is if the Raiders had taken a quarterback at 7. And then all of a sudden, 4 of them are off the board in the first 7 picks. And then you have every other team that kind of wants a quarterback jockeying to get back into the first round in the 20s to take Hooker. Like that was the out. It was
Minnesota at, what was it? I think they ended up trading up or whatever. But Minnesota at 23 was the team that people kept consistently mocking Hendon Hooker to. But I just was looking at the Vikings roster being like, their defense stinks. Thielen's gone, they got nothing. I don't know. I mean, I find these people who treat draft betting as like just this cash cow to be pretty disingenuous, because you can't get that much money down. You get limited pretty quickly. And 2, I mean, you're betting on tweets. Like you're just betting on tweets.
Well, you're better off believing the tweets than you are Reddit boards, I think.
I actually think the move, and I obviously I'm going to forget this when it comes down to getting draft bets down next year. I think the move is just to bet a lot of long shots early, like bet a lot of 10-1s, 20-1s, things like that. And instead of chasing steam, right? So a great example, Will Anderson at one point was like 10-1 to go 2. Then he was 3-1. Then he was minus 250. And I was like, oh, this is a lock. Will Anderson is going to, he's on Kay Adams' show saying the Texans are going to take me. I'm so excited how they're going to use me. And he does end up going to the Texans, but in a way that no one predicted. And betting that at 10-1, you're like, well, I didn't win, but I got closing line value and my bet was like directionally accurate. But betting that at 2-1 or at minus 200 is like a terrible wager. So I'm really trying to reinforce that to myself next year. It's just if you kind of accept that a lot of these bets are going to lose anyways, you should be betting them at the longest possible odds.
So essentially it just becomes golf betting.
Yeah, I mean, it's like golf betting, but in golf betting, getting closing line value feels good. Like when you bet a guy,
but it also really doesn't mean anything, because you could be like, oh, I bet, like I have Gary Woodland this week. I bet Gary Woodland at 90. Sure. At 90-1, I see that he's already down to 66 and 60 in some spots. Like, it doesn't make it fucking like great. I got 30 points of line value. Like, whatever. If I had bet him at 60-1, I'd still feel like pretty happy if he won. But he's not. He's not going to win.
But if you are consistently getting good numbers at open, like your numbers are getting worse after you're betting them, you can at least be like, well, the other billions of people on earth who are betting on golf think that I am onto something here, which is probably good.
Yeah, but I never win. So this happens all the time. I'll get on a guy and I make like a very strong case for him and I'll bet him and then I release the show and then his number goes haywire. Am I really getting closing line value or am I the product of making that happen?
Well, I mean, that's certainly you are in a unique position because people listen to what you say and the markets are going to react to what you say. So that's definitely a part of it. But Yeah, I mean, getting closing line value in general. I mean, this is like such a, and I hate gambling Twitter. I find gambling Twitter to be so full of
But
just truly insufferable people.
see. I mean, I get it, and Pizzola talks about it all the time on with me, and like that's what he's really aiming to do because he's not going to try to make himself out to be some sort of savant of predicting the future. What he is trying to predict are what the lines are going to be 3 hours from now, 3 days from now, and try to get on the good side of it, knowing that if he can continuously do that, he's going to end up with an edge over time. I understand how that makes a ton of sense. I just feel like it's less meaningful in golf than it is in other things, and especially with something like the NFL draft. Yeah, you want to have your 10-1, but it's because no one knows how to properly cap this market. Like, you're just kind of guessing.
Oh, well, I mean, that is 100% true. And it would be different. So like golf outrights are one thing, but like, for example, if you were like really grinding like golf matchups or whatever, getting that, because you're realizing that equity more often, getting closing line value there, you would, my guess is even over kind of a short time frame, like 6 weeks or something, you would really notice a difference in the wagers where you were getting closing line value versus ones where it was moving against you.
100%. And even like, I just don't bet all that much on head-to-head matchups, but I do really well with them. Like, if I just stop betting outrights and only bet head-to-head matchups in golf, I feel like I'd be a very profitable golf bettor. But I don't want to do that. That's no fun. I don't bet enough that it makes a difference to me. Like, I want to win. I mean, I want to win like $5,000 if I hit an outright.
That's always what I've said is that I sports bet recreationally. I sports bet like, it's not my job to sports bet. So I really only bet matchups and three balls and stuff for the majors because I'm so locked in to those events anyways. And I just want to have extra sweat. But like, at the Mexico Open, I'm not betting Will Gordon head to heads just because it's not really like, I don't find any joy in that.
I bet you those would have been pretty profitable though.
Yeah. I mean, talk about a guy. This golf betting season is just bumming me out. I've had 6 second places and I don't bet each ways all that often.
Hey, I'm at 8 second place finishes now with 1 winner. That's not good for your bank account. Trust me.
No, I've got 1 winner this year, but I need the bailout bet, like your one bailout bet you get every year. For me, it was Fitzpatrick at the US Open last year or 2 years. Was it last year or 2 years ago?
It was last year.
It was last year. Yeah, it was last year. I need that to happen to me again. Like I need like a 2-unit 40-1 bet to come in and just bring me back to even.
Are Bryce Young and CJ Stroud going to be any good?
I mean, again, like you're sort of asking a person who is not going to like I'm not going to say they're going to be bad. My read on both of them is that I'm worried about Bryce Young's both height and his weight because he is just going to get like, you just are going to get hit a lot playing behind a bad offensive line as a rookie. And you can weigh in at what he ended up weighing in at like 201 at the combine or whatever, but that's a fake weight. That's not going to be his playing weight. He trained for 6.
So he was suffering from inflammation those days. If he had been in the cryo chamber, he would have weighed like 178.
I think he was suffering from like 4 protein shakes a day for 6 weeks. I think was more the vibe that he was going for. And Stroud, again, the people who do scouting for a living kind of comp him to like
Derek Carr.
Like a Carr, a Cousins, like one of these guys who is like pretty good when he's on script, not so great outside of what the play design is. Now, the big unknown with CJ Stroud is he didn't run at all in his college career until his final 2 games, the college football playoff games, and he made multiple like 20+ yard runs, like difference making plays that ended up changing the game. And when he was doing, his combine interviews and everything, he was like, oh yeah, like I can do that. I kind of wish I had done it more just to put it on tape for people drafting me. And if he brings, and for example, Fields was the same way. Well, Fields really did not run at Ohio State.
Maybe that's just a part of their game plan. I have a show that I've already recorded with Seeley breaking down like fantasy running backs for the upcoming year. And he's like, well, you can just basically pencil Bijan Robinson into 350 touches. It's like Atlanta doesn't throw to running backs at all. Like, just because you're a good pass catcher out of their backfield doesn't mean they're going to throw to you. Maybe Ohio State's offense is geared very much the same way, where they don't want their quarterbacks to run. All of their design is just for pocket passing, and that's going to be it. Because you're right about Fields. At Ohio State, didn't run much. Like, Josh Allen wasn't a prolific runner in college like he is in the NFL either.
Well, Josh Allen just straight up stunk ass at Wyoming. Like anyone who wants to do the revisionist history on Josh Allen is wrong. It's not to say the Bills were wrong to pick him because clearly they saw the vision. And Josh Allen, even as a rookie, was like, he had more interceptions than touchdowns. Like he was horribly bad.
Sure, but you
now,
know what? In his rookie year, no one thought that he'd be playing that early, but you could see. I mean,
you could see it. Yes,
you could see it. You're like, oh shit.
Yes. No, I totally agree. Like you could look at him, you can be like, okay, just because he can't do this doesn't mean he can't do X, Y, or Z, right? And I think the issue with Young and Stroud is people look at them and they're like, that just kind of is what they are. That, you know, there's not like Bryce Young is a really good, accurate passer, good decision maker.
But like, what makes Bryce Young any different than Tua?
Right. No, exactly. I think you're right. All right. I don't disagree with what you're saying at all. And obviously what we saw with Tua is you got to put him in a very specific context to succeed. That context being having two of the 10 best wide receivers in the NFL. And that is very much not the situation that either Young or Stroud are coming into. Stroud is going to be fascinating because if you look at the 4 players he completed the most passes to when he was in college, all 4 of them are going to be top 20 picks in the NFL draft, right? Smith and Jigba, Garrett Wilson, Olave, and Marvin Harrison Jr. might be like the second freaking pick next year. So how does he do when he's not throwing to literally like all universe wide receivers?
Yeah, it'll be difficult because, listen, not every first-round wide receiver ends up panning out and being great. At least the guys in the NFL, even if they weren't first-round picks, they could have been undrafted. But the fact that they're playing in the NFL usually makes them pretty good to begin with. Like, if they all end up being as good as Garrett Wilson was last year, and all 4 of them have these amazing careers, then yeah, that's.
And Olave was pretty good too.
I mean, was Olave really good? Because I feel like a lot of Olave was, oh my God, look at these air yards, which like 30% of them came in one game where Jameis just took 5-step drops and threw it as far as he could in the general vicinity of Olave. And none of them were going to be fucking realized because they were like 10 yards over his head.
I mean, he had 72 catches for 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns in 15 games for a team where he was the only real passing option, right,
sure.
Mike?
So he had all the volume.
I mean, this is actually absolutely fucking insane to look at. Alvin Kamara was second on the team in receptions. Juwan Johnson was third. The only other wide receivers with over 20 catches on the team were undrafted free agent Rashid Shaheed and Jarvis Landry.
I forgot about that. I forgot that they had Landry for a bit. Shaheed's fast.
Shaheed is fast. I mean, Shaheed, I think, is actually like probably going to stick on their roster and be kind of a difference maker for a while. I personally am pretty impressed by any 22-year-old who can come in for the NFL and be a 1,000-yard wide receiver in like a pretty bad offensive context. Like the rest of the offense was really bad.
I'm not saying that he's bad, but I think that his stats may have been inflated by just the monster target share that he ended up with. Yeah,
but targets are earned, right?
I mean, are they? Here's our guy that we picked in the first round, and Michael Thomas got hurt, and Jarvis Landry is decrepit, and we have no one else to throw to. We'll throw to this guy.
But there are lots of other guys who, even in that same context, can't earn targets, right?
Like Drake London.
I mean,
Drake London earned a ton. He just didn't catch any of them.
I mean, there are just lots of guys who play every down, who are out there all the time and just never earn targets.
Sure,
right?
Sure. But now we're comparing Chris Olave versus Kirkwood, or what the hell that guy's name was, and Traquan Smith,
Keith like Kirkwood or whatever.
Yeah, general losers that have been on the Saints for years.
Yeah, I guess I would just say, I mean, maybe this is like a philosophical difference, but between how you and I are watching these guys, but I think Olave is pretty freaking good. Not as good as Garrett Wilson, but still pretty good.
Sure, and I'm not saying that he's a bad receiver, but do we think Michael Thomas comes back? He said he's going to come back, but like, is he going to play?
Who knows? Like literally, who knows? I heard some rumblings that they wanted to get Quentin Johnston. So clearly they view wide receiver, I think rightfully, as a problem.
But if they like Quentin Johnston's the guy that went to the Chargers, right? Like he's a burner. Like he's not replacing Michael Thomas. Like Michael Thomas is still going to come in slant boy. I mean, Quentin Johnston's not going to be slant boy.
Well, I mean, they could make Olave slant boy if they wanted.
I suppose they could if they wanted to go down that route. But if Michael Thomas is going to come back, at least you know that even at the beginning of last year when he was catching those touchdown passes from Jameis, it's like, all right, he can still do the one thing that he always did really well, just he couldn't stay healthy. I guess that's also a thing that he does really well is not stay healthy. But if you bring back Thomas and you have Olave there, you can find Shaheed as the deep guy. I think their offense is going to look a little bit better with Derek Carr. Like, not that I think that Derek Carr is like, but I kind of brought him up when we were talking about what CJ Stroud could be. And CJ Stroud could be completely different. Because we saw this with Herbert in his final game, the final bowl game. All of a sudden, Herbert started running. It was like, holy shit, who's this guy? Because he wasn't doing that all year long at Oregon. Then the final game, it's like, oh, he can run? Like
Trevor Lawrence did the same thing. Trevor Lawrence can scoot around a little bit, you know. And I mean, people can laugh. Like the difference between being a total zero at scrambling out of the pocket, like a Matt Stafford or whatever, and even like what Joe Burrow can do, it's like actually huge in terms of determining how defenses guard you and how like or like Mahomes does this all the time. Mahomes does not run in the regular season. He is like, dude, I am not getting cheap shotted in a week 8 game against the Broncos. And then every single year without failure, he makes multiple running plays in the playoffs. So like it's just the ability to do it is pretty important.
Yeah, the two safest prop bets you can make in the first game that their teams play in the playoffs is Mahomes over rushing and Josh Allen over rushing. Because Josh Allen will run throughout the course of the year, but like anytime anything is close in the playoffs, like I'm just gonna take off for 12 yards. Don't worry about that.
I'm loving these stories coming out of Buffalo now where his coaches are like, yeah, Josh, like you got to stop doing this. He's
not going to stop. He can't help himself.
Literally no chance. And I actually think you don't really want him to. Like my read is you don't really want Josh Allen thinking when he's out there. You know, I think you want him just vibing because Josh Allen just vibing is like an insanely good player.
But you have to get the lucky break that when he does the really boneheaded thing that you know that he's going to do, that it doesn't cost you when it happens. Like the fumble goes out of bounds or something like that.
Do you remember the
Houston game?
Playoff game 3 years ago when he lateraled to the fullback? That is one of my favorite. It's like obviously such a small play in the context of the NFL, but it's just like, I don't know. Like if I was a Bills fan, I would be so into that. I'd be like, I will die for you, Josh. Like whatever. Like just because the thing about Josh Allen is you can tell he's just like 100% a gamer all the time. Like he does not care about getting hit. He is just always trying to make something happen.
And the fact that he took that hit against the Jets and whatever it was like week 8 last year, like that fucked him up for the entire year. He was not great after that.
No. What was it? He had like an ulnar injury or whatever after that, and it was like a very marked difference. But like he's not missing games. You know, he's out there, he's grinding. I love Josh Allen. He's a good player.
Plays in the Pebble Beach Pro-Am every year now too.
Yeah, him and Rodgers. Although word on the street is that Rodgers is a sandbagger.
Yeah, like it does not shock me that Aaron Rodgers is secretly awesome at golf.
No. Awesome might be overplaying it, but he's pretty good.
Like he's probably like a 5, something like that. Like that's pretty good when a lot of your year is dedicated to playing football and not playing golf 4 times a week.
Yeah, I think he's a 5 who has an official handicap of like, I remember this from the match. I think he's like an 8, a USGA 8, but I think he's probably more like a 5.
That's still really good for a non-professional
it's unbelievably
golfer.
Good. Yeah, I mean, I can't even. I truly cannot even imagine being. I can't imagine being an 8, let alone a 5.
Well, I do want to talk about the running backs, like Robinson going 8, Barry Gibbs talk show going number 12. What the hell were the Lions thinking here? Like, yeah, maybe this is the guy that you want. Why did you have to take him there? You could have turned 12 into more picks and still gotten him.
I mean, no one knows. And there's definitely an element of, methinks the lady doth protest too much because the entire day after, the entire Friday and Saturday, they were, speaking to all these NFL mouthpieces, Tom Pelissero, Rap Sheet, all these guys. And they were like, oh, the Texans were considering taking him at 3 and the Cardinals were maybe going to take him. And we were afraid.
That's great. Let the Texans take it. Let the Texans trade the Will Anderson deal and take a running back instead. Good.
Right. Exactly. And then And then, there was the classic, we view him as more than a running back. We think he can play in the slot. We think he could be, X, Y, and Z. It's like, this is the same playbook. Every time a team takes a running back in the first round is they try and pretend that they're not a running back for some reason, It doesn't make any sense to me. Then they took a fucking middle linebacker at the 18th pick. I don't know. It was bizarre.
It just seems strange to me because it does seem like they're really close. Maybe these guys are, because they do have specific needs at those specific positions, but it always seems like the collective idea is you don't draft for actual team needs unless that team need is like a quarterback and you have a very high pick and there's one that you like. You don't want to get a shitty quarterback on your team because that will just stunt your progress for 5 years. Like Gibbs can come in and be electric and give them what they need that Swift couldn't at running back for sure and make them a better team. If they do truly need someone to absorb a lot of the running game, right? I mean, I really don't have any idea what Jack Campbell does well. Maybe he's great in coverage or something like that. Let's just say he's a run stopper. Maybe they do have this hole of trying to fill up the gaps and have someone who can just kind of slow the pace of the game down and make sure that people can't run all over you. That could go a long way in helping them getting to where they need to be. But you just think they'd be better taking corners and O&D linemen just to continue to shore up the positions that matter the most.
I mean, that's just pretty much like analytics front office 101 is that you want to be drafting guys at you want as much cost controlled labor at the positions that impact the passing game as possible. So edge rushers, cornerbacks, tackles, stuff like wide receivers. I mean, this was a pretty unpopular opinion. No one seemed to buy this. I thought the Lions should have taken one of these wide receivers. Specifically, I think Johnston was a good fit for them because the range of outcomes for Jameson Williams is like pretty wide at this point. I mean, this is true. He came back from the ACL last year in week 11. How many, just off the top of your head, how many passes do you think he caught?
Well, I had him in fantasy. He's on my keeper league team, and I almost traded him. I actually did trade him by accident to someone else when I was trading Javonte Williams. It's tough when there's a lot of Jay Williams around, and we got that worked out.
I get it.
We got that worked out. So Jameson Williams was returned to me, and Javonte Williams was left off my roster. But I don't know, 8 catches, 9 catches,
one.
He only had
one catch.
He only had one catch last year. Yeah, he had like a 43-yard touchdown.
That was it. That was his catch.
That was his only.
He played 70.
Hold on, that was his
only catch.
That was his only catch last year.
I was stunned by this too. Like in my memory, he was more involved.
Do you think he bet the under on himself?
Maybe he did. I don't know. But so the start to his career is he comes in with a torn ACL.
Oh yeah.
He plays 78. He plays 78 snaps in 6 games, 1 catch for a 40-yard touchdown, then immediately gets suspended for 6 games. Now I don't know this, but my guess is that when you're suspended, you're like, are you allowed to be at the team facility for like training camp and all that preseason games? Like, is he allowed to play in the preseason?
Yeah, he's allowed to play because Watson played in the preseason last year.
That's right, he did. Okay, so that changes my feelings a little bit because I think being away from the team entirely, that feels like a huge thing in his developmental curve, but it's still a very inauspicious start to a career. And I thought they had a great chance to add a guy who could come in and play. And let's say it works out, right? So let's say Jameson Williams comes back. He looks like the guy who's incredible at Alabama. Like there's no issue. You have 3 great wide receivers. You have St. Brown, you have whoever, Smith and Jigba or Quentin Johnson or whatever, and you have Jameson Williams, and you have this amazing explosive offense ready for either more Goff or you make a trade, you do whatever. And the NFC is so weak. The Lions could be like a Super Bowl contender by next year, if all this works out. And I don't think they went in that direction at all.
They drafted Hendon Hooker, right?
They drafted Hendon Hooker in the 3rd round. Yeah.
I'm curious to see what that turns into.
My guess would be if they're good this year, if they start out, promising, if they're 500 or better or whatever after 10 weeks, we probably don't see him. But if the season goes off the rails, Goff is, throwing picks, they can't get anything going. My guess is he's coming off of a torn ACL and he's 26 years old. Like, I don't know, maybe he might not even be healthy. The Hendon Hooker stuff was blowing my mind.
Well, was it the Georgia guy, Stenson Bennett? Did he end up getting drafted?
He got drafted in the 4th round. The Rams took him.
Oh, good for them.
He's
like your age, isn't he?
He literally is like as old as me, I think. I mean, shit, he might play this year. Like, who knows what the Rams are doing? Like, there's no point in Stafford playing.
Stafford's gonna play though, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna start. He's gonna start the season the same way he did last year. But Stafford has had so like, if this is a good injury, like this is a good search to go do. Just to go look at all the injuries Matt Stafford has missed games for. This dude's body, like he is like a Farvian level of injuries. I mean, he's had like he's had broken ribs. He's had herniated discs in his back. He's had ankle injuries. He's had hand injuries. Like Stafford has been beat up. So I kind of bought those reports he would think about retiring.
It's funny too, because for the first like 3 years of his career or so, he missed a ton of games and everyone's, oh, soft, fragile. And then I think he went like 10 years without missing a game despite having all these injuries.
Yeah, I mean, he played 10 games as a rookie, 3 games his second year. I don't remember what that injury was. And then 16 games a year, every year from 2011 to 2018. Like he really... I mean, I've always kind of been a Stafford guy. Like I liked the trade that the Rams made to get him when they did it.
I like him. He always felt to me like, I mean, Favre is a good comp. I mean, like Favre ended up getting it done and becoming a Super Bowl champion. And I mean, hell, it almost happened again for him. But I always felt like Stafford was close to that level, almost like, I mean, a better arm than Phillip Rivers, but in that style of player that I just like to watch. Not that they need to be particularly great or anything like that. But
sure,
like Romo, I would throw into that mix.
Oh, Romo, my childhood favorite quarterback. Sad to see the revisionist history around Tony Romo, and he's not doing himself any favors with the color comms anyway. But
yeah, but you
always love Romo.
See that's not the case at all. By the way, I think that him on CBS, even now that like the internet has turned on him, it's only helping his Hall of Fame case, which he shouldn't make, by the way. If we're not going to put Donovan McNabb into the Hall of Fame, then Tony Romo has legitimately zero opportunity to get it.
Yeah, he will not be a Hall of Famer. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer in my heart because I grew up rooting for the Cowboys, but he's not going to make it.
What else do I got? Did you see that NFL graphic fiasco the other night?
No, I didn't.
Paul, you might know about this. The Panthers game before I think it was the Bruins and the Panthers. They ended up like pulling the goalie and scoring with like 16 seconds left, but like 23 seconds left. A graphic came up on the screen that just said goal. And it was like, oh, the NHL was rigged. It was all that shit again.
Oh, I did see this. Yeah, I did see this.
And then people were, I forget what people were saying. It's like, oh, it's because of broadcast delay. It's like, no, that doesn't make any sense. It's just a lot of people who have no idea how TV production works had a lot of opinions on this. I just thought it was really funny.
Well, that's just sort of like the internet in general, is people become an expert on whatever the topic of the day is. The whole sports is rigged. People are currently like amongst my least favorite people on the internet, though. You know, these people who complain, they're like, oh, I had an 8-1 same game parlay at FanDuel, and all I needed was Clint Capella to get one more rebound, and FanDuel sent a message to the Atlanta Hawks telling Clint Capella to not get any more rebounds.
It'd be not like, it's funny because if that was the case, think about the like amount of respect you would have for institutions and their power, which these people clearly don't, but they still believe this, but they think that this is true. Like there's a logic gap between these things.
I mean, yeah, it's because I guess it's just that people they don't, I don't know. I guess all of our brains are just so rotten that we are so bad at logic, right? But, well, really what it comes down to is people just believe there's a shadowy cabal that's against them personally.
Yeah,
right? Because they're so important. They are at the center of their own universe, that there's got to be a reason why success and wealth and joy does not come to them, right? And it's got to be this cabal of people specifically working against them.
Yeah, it's a conspiracy against one. Like most Far Side comics around this. Maybe Gary Larson felt this way like 40 years ago, and he just channeled it into one cell animation in comic books. That I own like I grew up with like 18 catalogs of Far Side comics. Maybe they're not even funny. I just remember them being funny as a kid. But it's the same sort of thing as like the 9/11 truther stuff that you'll hear people say, George Bush is the stupidest person to ever be president. Also, he organized the biggest mass cover-up in the history of America. Like, maybe one of those is true. Both of them can't be true.
Well, I mean, this is a good left-wing grifter take. It's not that Bush organized it. It's that Cheney organized it using George Bush as a puppet.
But Bush just didn't know what was going on. Just didn't realize.
Yeah, they never told him. They never. It was all Cheney and Rumsfeld and the defense contractors who would stand to make a lot of money off of a war. Okay.
Good logic.
I got deep in the 9/11 conspiracy theories when that was like a very popular thing in the 2010s.
Well, when you could just YouTube loose change and be all in, like that really affected a lot of people.
It did. I actually think there's such a pipeline of the loose change and what was the other one? The Zeitgeist movie. I mean, there's such a stepping stone from those non-research, non-scientific made up bullshit documentaries to the QAnon vaccine, Bill Gates, George Soros complex that exists now.
Well, I want to go back to the NHL goal for a second. And Paul, you might actually have like the better insight on this because I know you've done the live production. But if a chyron comes up on the screen too early, for example. So I feel like one of two things happened in this because it happened at the same time that the goalie was pulled in the game. So either someone made a mistake loading in the graphic when they should have put up the empty net graphic that comes up on the screen when the goalie heads off to the bench, and instead they put in goal, or they were getting prepped for, like, they want to have the goal graphic ready because they've pulled the goalie, and like that's like the last graphic that would have to come up, and someone just hit the button early.
Nah, sports are rigged, bro.
Paul knows. They're rigged.
Rigged. I've been behind the scenes. You gave me too much. You gave me too much credit. You gave me. You made me out to be the expert, and then I gave you the answer that you didn't want. No, there's mistakes happening in like broadcasts all the time. They just only notice the things like a graphic mistake that is in the that suits their narrative. I mean, it goes back to like the DeMar Hamlin is dead thing. It's like every week these guys are on to something new. But yeah, the people who are trying to tell me, are you trying to it's out to get them and their money are so egregious. Like, bro, the books don't care about your $5 parlay. Or the people who are like, oh, the boosts, like the boosts are a trap. It's like, no, they want you to log in every single day to find those boosts so that you dump your money on other stuff. Like, that's how this industry works. That's all I got to say.
I mean, Paul obviously just spitting in the face of everyone who knows that DeMar Hamlin is cloned. Sad.
Not a friend of the people, Paul Shaughnessy.
Yeah, I thought Paul was was one of us, but here he is just parroting the Bill Gates Foundation basically.
Did you check out my sitcom bracket at all? Well, not my sitcom bracket. Sia's sitcom bracket.
So I did not track it vote by vote, but I saw the tweets as they were coming out, and I remember having some opinions.
Yeah, we're gonna. I want to get. It's pinned to my Twitter. I still think it's pinned to the top of my Twitter right now. If you want to take a look at the bracket,
I'm pulling it up right now.
Gary and I are gonna do the second round next week as we reopen voting to it. But everything went about as chalk as I thought it was gonna go in the first round. What? Because I think there's a big difference, and this is what I tried to speak to as we were breaking down the bracket itself. And I'll talk about the shows that weren't included. I didn't put the shows in. Sia did. Get mad at him, not me. Like, I love, like, Venture Brothers isn't on it. Not that it would ever win against anything, because I haven't seen that fucking show. But, like, Happy Endings, as, like, a pure network sitcom, Happy Endings is amazing. If people haven't watched Happy Endings, go watch Happy Endings. It's, like, 2.5 seasons. It's amazing. It should be on that list, but it's not. Like, Larry Sanders' show isn't on it. But there is a big difference between what I think is going to win and what I would pick to win. If you know what I mean.
Is The Simpsons not in this bracket?
It's a 3 seed. This was a point of contention on like all four of the shows.
Like that's like obviously like that's insane to make The Simpsons a 3 seed because The Simpsons would be my winner picking through, I'm sure.
And The Simpsons was my winner as well. But it is funny that to talk to people who aren't big Simpsons fanatics, like you and I both
they just don't get it.
They don't see it. And I'm like, I guess that makes sense. Because, I mean, you're younger than me, but, I mean, Garion's going to be the same way. You and Garion are around the same age. And Tim and I are around the same age. But it does feel like our childhoods somehow, despite an age gap, we're just built around watching The Simpsons all the time. And that's kind of
every day.
What your sense of humor is kind of geared around. But it was mainly watching those
it
first,
impacts
like,
your worldview, I think, when you grew up on The Simpsons. Like, either you're like a Simpsons person when you were young or you're not, and there's like a huge difference between those comedic senses of humor.
I completely agree, and it's how you interpret comedy for like kind of the rest of your being going through it. And it's a great show to go, especially if you've watched like the first, let's be generous and say first 10 seasons of The Simpsons. But a lot of people will counter, be like, well, there's 20 years of like absolute dog shit, which is a fair argument. And if you were a person that wasn't in on the ground floor, especially in syndication, and that was so big like in the late 90s, early 2000s, like when everyone caught up on Seinfeld or Friends, who was just a bit too young and why they became fans of those shows, The Simpsons was the king of syndication when you went around. It was just on every single channel.
They still are the king of syndication.
But like I will go through like I think there's like 8 channels that have Simpsons like scattered throughout during the course of the day when I'm flicking channels. Like I'll click onto it to see if it's a season 4 episode. If it's not, I'm like, I don't want to fucking watch this. Which I think does hurt its case.
I mean, yeah, but there's shitty episodes of all these shows, right? I mean,
yeah, but
I haven't seen a ton of these.
Is there 20 shitty years of? I mean, I can't even speak to what's happened the past 15 years with The Simpsons because it got bad and I stopped watching.
I mean, I still watch some of the new ones every once in a while. It's never as bad as people say. Obviously, it's not as good, and there are some particularly objectionable ones that they've done over the years, like, you know, having like Lady Gaga and Elon Musk centric episodes or whatever. But it's still like, I don't know. I'd still probably rather watch The Simpsons than any given episode of like Will and Grace.
Yeah, that's completely fair. Look at the bottom part of the bracket in the East region. Like that's the murderer's row of where this bracket. Everyone can go check out these brackets at the PME on Twitter. By the way,
all these shows are good. I guess I haven't seen some of them, but most of these are insanely good.
And it's funny because The Office is going to steamroll all of these shows, right?
Sure. Yes, 100%. But I would probably have King of the Hill coming out of the East region. But yeah, The Office is the Office fan base, dude, is just voracious.
Yeah, and that is to be expected. It won in the first round against Elf with 92% of the vote. So Cust had King of the Hill winning that like mini bracket, beating The Office, or beating 30 Rock. I had 30 Rock beating King of the Hill in that spot. It's funny because Family Guy is a part of that as well. And Sia was trying to make the argument that not only is Family Guy better than The Simpsons, but Brian Griffin is like the best animated sitcom character of all time. It was just like mind-blowing stuff.
I'm really triggered by this.
You should watch
like
these.
Family Guy.
You should listen to these shows then. Just outrage. Listen to them.
Family Guy is I don't know. American Dad is the good Seth MacFarlane show.
See,
we're
on the same page with
Guy.
this. I think our tastes are too similar. That's why me and you probably shouldn't do a show on this. We just agree about everything.
Yeah. The Critic probably would have made my bracket. You know.
Yeah, I love The Critic. Like I like The Critic more than those Seth MacFarlane shows, but like I also would have had The Simpsons as a 1 seed and South Park as a 2 seed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you watched the new season of South Park?
I haven't. I'm probably not current on South Park for like the last 5 years or so.
Oh man, I caught up on it when I was away. Like I went and, like I said, I went out and I saw my brother down in LA. We just watched South Park. He's like, you got to watch this new season of South Park. It is fucking fantastic.
I believe South Park is still good, but Trey and Matt sort of became just the living embodiment of, both sides are bad, both sides are terrible, and that
I mean why are they the living embodiment of that now? Haven't they always been that?
I guess you know what, that's actually fair. That's actually fair.
South Park is just nihilism. It always has been.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess that I've never heard it phrased that way, and I think it's probably right.
So you shouldn't be shocked at that if someone describes them that way, or they describe themselves as that way. That's nothing new.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like the whole politics also just has become so depressing to me that engaging with something that even engaging with something that is nihilistic is still like a little depressing. You know what I mean?
So this is one that I thought was going to happen. It's funny you said you would have King of the Hill coming out because I would too. It lost in the first round to Eastbound and Down, a show which is very funny.
Eastbound and Down is great. It is great.
But King of the Hill is an all-timer.
King of the Hill. Yeah, I would say Eastbound and Down is hilarious, and you're like gut laughing when you watch it. But King of the Hill is sort of like a permanent show. Like it's just great. Like there's no way around it. Like it's got everything that a sitcom needs to have.
And it's just like we have Frasier as the number 1 seed in that region. Like I love Frasier. It has 0 chance of winning.
Yeah, you're a big Frasier Maxi. I have not watched that much of it. What I have watched of it is good, but like
you should.
I watch more Cheers than I did of Frasier.
Okay, I mean Cheers is 2 seed. Also another one probably doesn't have much of a chance. Just I think it's a bit too old for the people that would be voting in this bracket.
Yeah, I mean that is a problem, right? Is a lot of people voting on this bracket are not going to have seen that, not going to have seen, Silver Spoons, or honestly even Cheers probably.
Yeah, well, I mean that's one of the reasons why we left out like All in the Family and hell, I mean I don't know if MASH really counts as some of these don't like are animated shows sitcoms. I guess is a better question for this sort of bracket.
I mean, I think for this exercise you have to include both. Is the Cosby Show? So the Cosby Show is a 3 seed. Have we not just canceled the Cosby Show? Have we not just removed it from our memory?
Well, it lost to 2.5 Men in the first round. So
2.5 Men was it was good. Mindless TV. I don't remember any of the key plot points really, but I remember thinking it's like sort of generally funny.
Yeah, I always kind of found like just because I love Charlie Sheen. In everything that he's in. He
is just, for all his faults, the dude's funny as hell.
And listen, even on Spin City, after he replaced Michael, I love Spin City. And it's just another one that just I think it's a bit too 90s. Like Seinfeld is the ultimate 90s show, but it is the ultimate 90s show. So it has lasted over time and everyone props it up as the greatest show of that period. And Friends got the second life on Netflix, but it seems like Friends, not that I love Friends, which I don't, but it does seem relatively more current than Seinfeld, like 20 years later.
Seinfeld even like was so of its time. It was commenting on like very specific things about life then, and Friends is sort of like just more, eternal stories about friendship and love and marriage and all this shit. There's like, I don't know. The things that those characters do in that show is so far removed from our life now. You know what? A secret thing I love, I wonder what you think about this, is these the Josh Gondelman modern Seinfeld account.
Oh, I remember following that like 7 years ago, and I don't think I ever checked back on it again.
He runs it on Instagram now, and it's I don't know. It always gets me. Like it's like these little 280 character like Seinfeld episode recap. I'm just like a huge fan because the idea of Seinfeld happening in 2023 with all of our like imagine the Chat GPT episode of Seinfeld.
Well, there's a Chat GPT episode of South Park that I just watched. It's great.
I mean, I bet it's good. Yeah.
So you should really be on that, or go rewatch Frasier. That's why I keep bringing up Frasier. Is that of all these 90s shows, it's aged by far the best. Like it's,
I believe that
they're so wildly out of date in 1994, and that's the joke of the show. Just how pretentious and all of their references are from the 1800s and like opera. Like that doesn't age poorly. It only ages better.
It gets. Yeah, I totally. What is it streaming on? Is it on Netflix?
I have no idea. The difference between streaming services.
Between
Canada and the U.S. is massive. Like I tried to.
It's like there's like a whole subset of like people buy like VPNs to get like Swedish Netflix or Canadian Hulu or whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, you would be better off buying a VPN and getting Disney Plus in Canada because I believe Disney Plus in Canada is Hulu, Disney Plus, and one of the other ones all in one.
Yeah, it is. Disney Plus, by the way, I mean, I don't know if you're tuned into this. They're kind of giving up on the streaming wars.
Really? I thought they were doing.
Yeah,
I thought they were doing the best of the streaming wars.
Well, I think they're capitulating and admitting that they're never going to catch up to Netflix. And they're big flagship stuff. They're going to start bringing Star Wars back to the theaters.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense, but I think, well, you've been on your Patreon, you've been doing Mandalorian with Brian, right?
Yeah, we're big. Well, and we hated it. We did not. We were the nerds mad about Star Wars in the most recent season.
So all the Star Wars IP for the TV shows, like, wouldn't that just be enough to justify Disney Plus being around? Like, I have Disney Plus because my fucking kids love Disney Plus. Like, all the kid shit's on there. Like, anyone who has kids is gonna have Disney Plus.
Yes, and certainly there is like so like the Marvel people will always have Disney Plus, and the Star Wars people will always have it. But like, there was a point where like the Mandalorian was viewed as like, transcending being just a little nerdy Star Wars show and being like, like The Last of Us or whatever, where it was like a prestige drama that like people were maybe not a prestige drama, but just like, sort of crossover appeal. Like, maybe Alan Sepinwall was watching it or whatever. And it's not that anymore. It is just a self-contained nerdy story. Yes.
But it felt like what you're describing, I only watched like the first half hour of the first episode of Andor, but it felt like Andor was what you're talking about, not The Mandalorian.
Yes. Yeah. Andor was the best show I've watched this last year. It was so good.
Are you watching Succession at all?
No. Mm-mm.
Really?
I didn't watch the first 2 seasons before it got like big, and I just got to go back and catch up. I gotta see. The issue is if I'm gonna sit down and watch an hour-long drama, I'd like to watch it with my wife, and she is not nearly as into these prestige dramas as I am. She likes the shitty reality TV.
Oh, well, speaking of that, are you watching Vanderpump Rules with her?
So that's what she's watching right now.
How are you not watching it too? This season is so fire. Very rarely do you see a show in season 11 just have like its best season since season 2.
So she's not watching this current season. I think she's like a season or 2 behind.
Oh.
She's like getting all caught up on it or whatever. So eventually I'll have opinions because she's got it on in the background or whatever on the iPad. So I pick up the references here and there. Is
she following the off the field stuff with Vanderpump Rules?
So I think what she does when she watches these reality shows is when she gets caught up, then she starts to follow all the people on Instagram or social media or whatever. But until then, she doesn't. I believe that is her process.
I feel like this one's been a hard one to miss because Lisa and Ariana.
Yeah, I'm aware.
They were just at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and Roy Wood was making jokes about Vanderpump Rules there.
Yeah, even I, as someone who doesn't know these people, doesn't know these characters. There's a guy named like Sandoval, right, and he's at the center of all this drama.
That's him?
It's like crossed over. It's like crossed over to being like social media news, basically.
Yeah, like it's become like legitimate news and following this guy around now.
Kind of crazy because weren't the whole original deal was these people were just waiters, right?
Yeah, they were like they were all like actors trying to do whatever in LA, but they all just worked at this one place. And the show worked because like they were actually friends in real life, unlike most reality shows. Because they all worked together for 3 years. Like 3 of them lived together. They were like, oh, let's just take this friend group and follow them around. And then they all kind of became celebrities. A whole bunch of them have been like canceled and they're not allowed on the show anymore. Although I remember talking to Adam Rank about this. I don't think that you should be cancelable from reality TV. Because the people who get canceled are the reason that reality TV works. Like
what are they getting canceled for?
One of them got canceled for racism. The other one just got canceled because he's like the shittiest dude in the world. Him and his wife are just out there. But like they're the people that you want to see on the TV. That's why you watch trash reality TV. Like same things happen to The Challenge. Like they used to have the biggest maniacs in the world on The Challenge. Now they have fucking CrossFit people on. They're not interesting. Like, I don't want to watch it anymore. Like, if I wanted to watch CrossFit games, I would watch CrossFit games. I want to see messy people making terrible decisions, being shitty people on my TV screen. That's what I signed up for.
I mean, that's what it's all about. Do you watch Love is Blind?
I don't know. But I get caught because
that one I've watched.
Some of these people come on The Challenge, so I'm like, all right, and they're usually the most entertaining people now.
It's like I generally am pretty dismissive of reality TV. It's not my thing, but Love is Blind is like it's such a fascinating psychological experiment. Like, most of these shows don't really have a hook. It's just like, watch these rich, poorly behaved people make messes of their lives.
Yeah.
But Love is Blind is like, it's like, actually you learn something about the human condition watching this show.
Oh, no way. I'm getting it confused. Is Love is Blind is the one where you don't see the other person, right?
Yeah, you're like you're in a room on your own,
No, fuck that.
and you.
No, I was thinking of Love Island, which is way better.
Yeah, Love Island. I think my wife has watched that show too. That one was not for me.
Man, you really would have hated reality TV like 15 years ago. Like, were you like anti Jersey Shore when Jersey Shore came out?
I didn't watch any of these shows. I didn't watch The Real World. I'm not here to say like my tastes or interests are better than anyone else. It's just, it's not always for me.
I couldn't imagine by the 2023 standards of making a television show and how you cast, and just like what a phenomenon Jersey Shore became, mainly because all 8 of them were such trash people.
Yeah, I mean Jersey Shore, I didn't watch it, but I still remember the phenomenon of it. Like people, having like I want to say new episodes were on like Thursday, and this was when I was in college, and people would it was like a thing. Like you'd go to like a house party and watch the new episode of Jersey Shore. Like it was like to that degree of people being into it.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did. We used to have entourage gathering parties on Sunday night, then go like downtown to the clubs, and then we used to do that also on Thursday for Jersey Shore.
Yeah, like it was a real thing, which is like, I mean, you just can't even have that now in culture. Like the most successful TV show, like chances are the person you talk to at work has not seen it.
I mean, that's the Succession problem, really, is that not that many people watch Succession. It gets covered like it's Game of Thrones, but it has 1/10 the audience.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's just like what this show that Amazon did, the Rings of Power. Like, how many people watch that?
I don't know.
They spent $1 billion on it.
It looked really bad, and I hate Lord of the Rings anyway, so it was not for me.
Yeah. I mean, I really like Lord of the Rings, and it wasn't really for me either.
Then who is it for?
That's what's interesting, is who is it for? Because it's not really for people who've read the books, for people who are really into the books, because they're just making shit up. They're, putting words in J.R. Tolkien's mouth. And it's not really for people who don't like nerdy shit, because it's still pretty nerdy. So I don't really know who this show was made for.
See, that at least with the Star Wars shows that you were talking about, it does seem like they're leaning into being somewhat fan service. And if that's, in season 3 of Mandalorian, that's all you got left, at least you're still pumping out content. Like, I just watched season 3 of Star Trek Picard, which I think was probably its best season, because they actually
Brian said this was like the best Star Trek of like the last 20 years. He said it was like unbelievably good.
It was really good. Although the cartoon Lower Decks is fucking hilarious. Is actually the best like Star Trek IP that's going. But yeah, this season of Picard was awesome. Way better than the first 2 seasons. But all it just did was just lean into nostalgia of 30 years ago. That's it. Like, if you didn't know these characters from 30 years ago, there's no chance you'd be watching the season.
I mean, yeah, but that's
good enough.
Like nostalgia is like the number one driver of television viewership and movie viewership these days.
Oh, for sure. But that's what they leaned into. They're like, they tried to create like new stuff with Picard and new characters for the first 2 seasons.
And it just didn't work.
And I just don't think anyone watched it. So they brought everyone back from like Star Trek The Next Generation.
Right.
And they're all old people now, but either way, but like they did great ratings for it, because that is a subsect of people. And if things don't get viewership anyway, well, at least you can hook in viewership this way. Enough people will care about this to watch it. And that's good enough. At least, like you said, it was for someone, where this Lord of the Rings show doesn't seem to be for anyone.
Yeah, it really, it's a real problem, because they're spending so much money on it, and I don't think the show writers have any idea what to do with the reaction to the first season of their show, because so much of it was overwhelmingly negative, and they've kind of written themselves. I don't know what they're gonna do. And now there's rumors there's gonna be like a Tolkien cinematic universe. I don't know. It seems like it's gonna be terrible.
Have you golfed yet this year?
I played 1 round. I've been to the range a bunch, though. I actually have a lesson tomorrow.
Oh, you're taking lessons now. I gotta say, it's helped me tremendously.
Yeah, I mean, my issue is basically the swing that I learned is messing with my new swing. Like as I've gotten a better motion, like better flexibility, my old like hand movement is causing this is very inside baseball, but my hands close so quick that all my shots go about 30 yards to the left. Like when I really pure it because I used to be so unflexible when I was swinging.
So it's funny because that's when I readjusted my swing, that started happening to me. Because I used to have like the basically the chopping wood swing, and I had it for 20 years.
Yep.
I would just slice everything.
Same.
Just everything was just
Yep.
pure slice. Driver, wedge, didn't matter what it was going to be. It was just going to go start out slightly to the left and hook into the right woods. And then once I started having my new swing, the same thing kind of happened to me where I'd be closing my hands through impact. And everything was going like left, like it'd be going high, but it would just be drifting left, like not a complete hook, but left. And the guy that I was taking lessons from, he's like, that's actually a good thing. He's like, that means you're actually closer to a real swing than what you were doing before. It's like, we can work from left back to center. He's like, it's really hard to work from left to right back to center because everything you're doing is fundamentally wrong.
That's basically, so I had the first lesson 2 weeks ago. And he was basically like, so I'd taken 2 lessons with this guy last year. Then I got married and I went on my honeymoon and then football season started. So I just didn't really have the time and setting back up with him now. And obviously I've played some since then and practiced some since then. And I've got the hip turn better, shoulder turn better, keeping the left arm straight, but my hands are still doing the same thing that it was doing before. So like I played around 3 weekends ago or whatever, and like half my tee shots were, in the woods out to the left, which irons were okay, but I'm just like losing crazy amounts of tee shots.
Yeah, which sucks. That started happening. That's why I ended up going to take lessons in the first place. Was like I'd be shooting like 97 with 8 OB balls. It's like if I could just clean this up, my scores would start being a lot better. And that I started taking lessons halfway through like a year and a half ago, and just like the rest of my season was a complete fucking write-off. I was so bad after I changed my swing, but then it got better last year, and it's been better to start this year. So you'll get there. Is all I'm saying. I went from being like a 20 to 25 to like a 10 to 14. So I'm hoping to build on that this year. Having something to like having something to play for is also a lot better too, like to get better.
So nice.
Yeah.
And I've also noticed, because I like didn't swing really at all when it was really cold here in the Midwest. Like I probably didn't swing for like 2 or 3 months. And coming back out, I was like, my short game for someone who's bad at golf is like, that's the part that I can kind of get around. Like I can set myself up for, makeable par putts and stuff, even if I'm scrambling. And I just had like no feel, like just like sitting there with the club, like, what did I used to do here? What am I like? I just kind of forgot everything.
Interesting stuff. All right. That's going to do it for at least the Pat Mayo experience version of this. Do you have anything to add, take cast wise?
No, I didn't come to the table with any topics for you. Let's end with this. Who is Pat Mayo's vote for who should be the next James Bond? I think we've discussed this before, but I don't think either of us have given a firm answer.
How old is Tom Hardy now?
That's the issue. Is he? I want to say
he's 45. He's a lot older than I thought.
Yeah, and it's the same problem with Idris Elba too, who would have been my vote, but he's got like maybe 10 years where he could pull it off now.
Idris Elba's even older than Tom Hardy, isn't he?
Yeah, he's 50.
Chalamet as Bond?
I think if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna go with a young guy, I think you got to do Tom Holland. I think, and Holland would bring, he would bring some of the Connery like lightheartedness and jokes and stuff back to it, as opposed to the Daniel Craig version, who was so somber and so serious. And I'm curious your thought on this, because we've had we disagreed on the ending of the Bond movies. Like I appreciated using James Bond to tell like a darker, more serious, more human story, but Bond at his best is like a cartoon character kind of.
See, I'm with you on that. Like I do think like my favorite Bond movie is Goldfinger, which is the one that I've seen the most amount of times. I've seen the Connery ones, and I think a lot of it is where do you come into the Bond series? Like growing up, we used to have 21 Days of Bond on TBS.
Right.
that they would all be on everything up until I don't think they had any of the Brosnan Bonds because it would have been late 90s. They wouldn't have had the rights to GoldenEye or Tomorrow Never Dies. So you got a lot of Connery, a lot of Moore. You didn't really see On Her Majesty's Secret Service all that much.
See, but that one's great.
No,
that one's great.
It's okay. Like, it's not as good as Diamonds Are Forever or From Russia with Love or Goldfinger, the other movies that came out around it with Sean Connery.
I mean, I love the Bond movies, even the bad ones, even Tomorrow Never Dies, which is like a truly terrible film. I'll still watch it if it's on.
I don't like the bad Roger Moore ones. Like, they infuriate me. I don't like Roger Moore as Bond, I think is what it boils down to. But, like, the bad ones are really bad.
I mean, Tomorrow Never Dies is the worst one, right?
Tomorrow Never Dies, the one that has, like, Malcolm McDowell as, like, the tech billionaire? Or is that the one
yes,
with...
and
or is that the one with
and
Denise Richards as, like, the nuclear scientist?
Oh, the Denise Richards one is terrible. That's the next one. The Denise Richards one is, which I forget the name of it even. Yeah, I think Holland would be good though, right? I think he'd be funny. He's got the accent. People don't even know that he has the accent because he's an American in Spider-Man, but he's got a good. I guess he's South British, not North British, so he'd have to change it a little bit.
Yeah, but what Connery's Scottish, so I don't think it really matters.
Bond is Scottish. Bond is in the books. Bond is a Scotsman.
What about Robert Pattinson?
Well, can you be Batman and James Bond?
Why not? You can be anything these days.
He would be, so Pattinson would just be a continuation of the Craig stuff, though. He would be brooding and serious.
He would be, because I think he's been cast in a lot of those things, but I mean, maybe he's not. Maybe it's just a good opportunity. I think that's how they want to make, because when Nolan made Dark Knight, it kind of shifted that entire genre, and Bond fell into superhero category. And then you have these more serious action-packed, darker type superhero movies. But it's funny, the ones that it really seemed to hit, I mean, not that I go around watching a ton of superhero movies, but it did seem like Thor Ragnarok is kind of widely known, and the Guardians of the Galaxy ones, where they're also funny, that people seem to like those ones more.
Yes. So people did I think I stopped watching the Marvel movies after Guardians of the Galaxy. That's my memory. There just was too many of them. And yeah, like Chris Pratt is like a hero, anti-hero, funny, joking guy. Like people responded to that. But I mean, look, the Robert Pattinson one was not funny, was very dark, was very intense, and people loved it.
Batman's tough though, right? Like, how can Batman be funny unless it's Adam West playing him?
I mean, there are certainly some people, I think, who would like the campy version of Batman to return. But to me, the best Batman stories have been the Alan Moore style ones, where he's just this dark, depressed, like mental patient, basically.
Yeah, I mean, that's the entire Batman story. He's just a crazy person.
Yeah. I have a Batman tattoo.
Really?
Yeah, I really do. I got it when I was 18.
Is it on your ass?
No, it's on my rib cage.
Oh. That seems like rib cage seems like it would hurt for a tattoo.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm an old man now, so I barely remember, but I do remember it smarting quite a bit. I have two on my rib cage, and they both, I think, hurt pretty bad.
Oh, you know who could be James Bond? Now that I don't know how old he is, I guess. Did you watch White Lotus?
Yes.
So the husband in White Lotus, not Aubrey Plaza.
Oh, dude, what is his name? He would be a good Bond.
He just looks like you would think. He's 38, Theo James. He's 38 years old. He's British.
Yes. Dude, I think we just changed this guy's life. He just went from being like a TV actor to being James Bond. I think he would be perfect, man. He would be so good as Bond.
I don't even know what this guy is in other than White Lotus. I don't think I'd ever seen him in anything before.
Okay, Theo James. Let's see if we recognize
Underworld.
any of this stuff.
I did not check out Underworld Awakening or Underworld Blood Wars, so I was out on those.
Yeah, I haven't seen. Oh, I haven't seen it. He was in Downton Abbey, I guess.
For one episode, it says.
The Time Traveler's Wife.
Yeah,
I haven't seen any of these.
Didn't see that.
Yeah.
So I saw.
Yeah,
he's in The Gentleman, which is coming up soon. That's is that a Guy Ritchie movie? Yeah, it is a Guy Ritchie movie. Matthew McConaughey, Colin Farrell. Oh my God, Jeremy Strong's in this. Good Lord. Hugh Grant, Charlie Hunman, and this guy is in it. So, I mean, maybe
that sounds good.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds good.
I watched. Well, The Gentleman came out in 2019. Apparently, there's going to be a Gentleman 2 that he is in that's coming out. But I did just watch the Amazon Guy Ritchie movie with Jason Statham.
I don't think I've ever seen a Guy Ritchie movie.
What? I guess yeah.
Would I like them?
You're younger than me because they hit hard when I was still in high school when Lock, Stock came out and when Snatch came
These
out.
are like these are like Jason Statham like beat 'em up movies, right?
No, not at all. They were Jason's because I went back and looked at it because Jason Statham's the star.
I've seen the Sherlock Holmes movie.
Well, that's yeah, okay. There's 3 of them. You can watch them in order. Like you watch Lock, Stock, you watch Snatch, then you watch Rock and Rolla. And like those are like they're just British crime movies. They're not like beat 'em up movies at all. Like Jason Statham's kind of like the opposite of the beat 'em up guy in these movies. They're just like British low level gangsters.
Yeah, honestly, it sounds like something I'd be really into.
They are legit Tarantino ripoff movies from the late 90s.
Well, and I mean I love Tarantino, so Tarantino ripoffs are kind of right up my alley.
Yeah, and they're all funny, which helps.
That's kind of the underrated thing about Tarantino movies is that they're funny, right? That's like what actually differentiates them from most other like action violence movies.
Yeah, and I would say that that Guy Ritchie is sort of like the British version of that, but clearly he's just copying and pasting with a British Cockney spin on it going through. But that's what I like. I mean, that I think that's why you're going to like Succession when you finally watch it. It has that bad thing that The Wire has where you kind of have to like slog through 4 or 5 episodes. You're like, I don't get why anyone likes this. And then it's like, oh, okay. And then like you're off and running, which is a real problem for some TV shows. At least HBO allows people to do that. But Succession is fucking hilarious. Like it's a legitimate comedy.
I mean, like, which I enjoy. I'm not gonna promise you, but I will the next time my wife seems interested in watching something that's not Vanderpump Rules, I will propose Succession.
Make it your treadmill show. Just watch it. Just
I read on the treadmill.
Well, you know what I mean? I can't read, so I can't do that. So I don't like you bragging about that. But you know what's even easier than reading on the treadmill? Watching something.
Watching TV. Yeah. It's the only time I really get locked into reading. Like a lot of the times it's hard for me to like sit down and focus, but on the treadmill I can do it because I'm like the alternative to not focusing on this book is fucking running or incline walking. So I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I've been on the incline walking train lately too. It's easier on my joints. Although I do have to get like a max sweat going. I do need to like sprint a few times a week.
I do. I sprint 2 days a week, like 12-mile-an-hour sprints, but nice. I don't do it for very long. But I do that just because to prove that I can still get my heart rate up.
Yeah. Although, you know, the older you get, the more the heart rate gets going. You're like, holy shit. And then you have to be like, am I having a heart attack? No, I don't do this as often anymore. Anyway, that'll do it. Pat Mayo Experience, TakeCast. Subscribe to the TakeCast audio podcast if you haven't already. And for more Davis stuff about football, we did talk about football for like an hour. That helps. That's helpful to people.
Sure. We got some football talk in there. Enough to keep the people. We like Hansel and Gretel them. You know, we left some crumbs of football to get them to the James Bond talk.
I mean, it's funny because the video viewers are going to hate it, but the audio listeners are really going to love it. That seems to be the split in my audience.
You know, everyone can have a little bit of what they want, but you can't have everything you want all the time. It's not even good for you to get everything you want all the time.
I suppose that's true. All right, dude. Thanks for being on.
Beautiful. Thanks for having me, everyone. We'll see you around.
Yeah, no problem. Remember to smash the like button while you are here. Sub to Mayo Media Network and leave a good rating and review on the podcast. Not a bad one, or I will find you and I will get you. And get you to delete it or change it to a 5-star review. So might as well just make it a 5-star review to begin with, all right? I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!